Hi, and welcome to the How to Love Living podcast. My name is Jeremy, and this podcast is just my adventures in how to love living, sharing my life experiences, and just sharing the things that help me, the books I'm reading, and the ideas I have, and the experiences I have that have improved my life. Am I perfect? Not by far, but I have a lot of life experience, and if I can help one person, this podcast is worth everything. So, the very first thing I want to talk about, I debated this pretty heavily, trying to figure out a good way to approach this in a way that would keep engagement. But I think it's important to discuss just briefly before we get into this week's topic, which is self-acceptance. And maybe this is kind of our national acceptance, that being the hint. Basically, I want to talk briefly about just the distressful things that are happening on the national level and really acknowledge that mentally, for all our mental health, this is very distressing. We've survived 2020 and the pandemic and the riots and the things that have happened then. Now we're heading into a group of individuals that raided our Capitol building. It's very disturbing, and we are in a place that we can't ignore. And we do need to acknowledge it, and we can't put this in retrospect as something of, oh, this isn't important, or oh, we're going to minimize this to save ourselves. But in this case, we can't ignore it anymore. We can't ignore the problems that we have in the USA. We can't ignore the issues that we're having. And I think it's just important that each person listening to this be engaged regardless of your political leanings. Be engaged and pay attention and participate if you can. And I think that as long as we're all fighting for the same thing, which is that there is justice, there's truth, there is love, and there is understanding. And part of it, I think, is understanding that everything in moderation, and this is life in general. I always err on the side of moderation. And the reason I do that is because too much of any one good thing is not good. And so I always kind of measure myself in moderation. And I think that from a national level, we do, one, have to acknowledge what's going on. We have to be aware of it. And we have to come in a measured, moderate perspective that creates hope, love, peace, and unity. And that's the direction we need to go. I know that there's individuals that feel disenfranchised on all sides. Ultimately, no one's going to get their way. There's no situation where one side's just going to completely get their way. And because it's so polarized, and I think that if you get to the extremes of either side, you'll see that they're both saying similar things. They're concerned about corporations. They're concerned about money in politics. They're concerned about corruption. They're concerned about their futures. I think that there's a lot of commonality, but I think there's two different approaches. And I think that in this situation, we can't, on either side, tolerate usurping the law and usurping the government. I think that it's important to follow the laws. I think that you can speak, you have the freedom of speech, but you don't have the freedom to loot. You don't have the freedom to create anarchy. You don't have the freedom to raid the Capitol building. So, how do we handle this mentally? Like, I kind of laid out my perspective on it. I love all the individuals in our country and all over the world. I think that we're all just people, we're just people trying to do the best we can with what we got. And I think it's really setting down and giving yourself space to absorb and understand and go through the emotional stages of what's going on. And I think part of that is having a good cry, is really what I feel like. I feel like having a good cry, just letting those emotions go, understanding the gravity of what happened this past Wednesday, and really having a good cry, like mourning the things that are going on and mourning the concern you have and mourning and just being in that place of we all want it to be better and we all want this to work its way through and get us to a resolution, because ultimately we're weaker as a nation with this, and we need to get behind unity, and we need to listen, less talking, more listening, and come to the table and figure this out. And as adults, we can do this, or we can be immature and go raid buildings and go do the things that we're doing. So hopefully the people rally behind our government and rally behind the things that make us great and focus on that. And those that want to destroy it because it isn't working for them, the good thing with this system versus others is you get a voice. Even though the voice isn't huge, you do get a voice. You can say your piece and you can go in and at least be heard. You may not get your way, but that's not how the system functions. The function of the system is to build up and give us peace. So, well, not give us peace, but really give us, safety and all the things that come with that. And I know that I want a lot more out of our systems. I know other people want a lot more. And I think that that's going to come over time. Regardless, have a good cry if you need to. I found it very relieving to just have a cry and just let that distress come out. I think crying is one of those underappreciated ways to let go of your emotions. I don't think you should be proud if you haven't cried. I think that, depending on your vulnerability states and that sort of stuff, go and have a cry by yourself alone. Just do it, be done with it, and you'll feel so much better at the end of it. You'll feel better. You'll have all that kind of pent up emotion relieved. And sometimes the pent up emotion that's deep inside you, you feel this edge, but you really don't understand where it's coming from. Sometimes, and this is my experiences at least, is sometimes the emotions are driven off things that I'm not associating with my emotions, but then once I kind of see it, then I begin to acknowledge it and, do the things I need to do to get over it. Especially on things where I have no control, which in these situations, I have no control. All I know is I care deeply about everything and I want nothing more than peace. And I have anger and I have frustration, but that anger, frustration is less than my need for peace. And so that's kind of where I'm at. And I hope that everyone's kind of at that place where we can put our anger and frustrations aside and seek peace and seek to move our nation in the right direction. And I think as we go through the next couple of weeks, it's going to be very difficult. I anticipate that it's not going to just be easy, but I think that it will work itself out in the long run. In the meantime, what you can do is do the emotional processing, go through regardless of where you're at, and really strive to get to a point where you can see a vision of peace and see that even if it's going to get bad, we're not alone. Other humans in history have experienced this, and this is just part of being alive and understanding your emotions and knowing that you're coming to this world and this earth to bring things to it of beauty and bring things to it that help others, and know that in the end, this life we lead and this life we live is one that is of exploring and learning. It's of experiencing. It's of service. It's doing the things for our fellow human beings and doing things for yourself that bring us up better, that get us to a better point. And that's what I'm focused on, is how can I make things better? And how can I, contribute in a positive way to things getting better? And so I think that right now the thing I can contribute is to say, have a good cry, have feel your emotions, let it all go, and know that it's not over with, that we're still in the middle of this, but know that it will get better. I do believe that even in times of stress, even in times where things don't seem to ever end, they will, and it will get better. I feel firmly in that any circumstances I've lived in my life, I've slowly worked my way out of them, especially circumstances that were very distressing. It got better over time, and I got out of those distressful situations and I got to better places. So I know it gets better, and I know that it will get better for us in the long term. But patience is a great virtue, and earnestness is something that we just have to work on, being earnest and doing the best we can for our fellow man. So I want to move on now that I've said my piece on everything that's going on nationally. I want to move on and I want to talk a bit about self-acceptance. Self-acceptance is a quandary. It's something that it's interesting because we really are so very different. Every single individual on this earth is distinctively different. Our society wants us to conform in certain ways. And specifically, our society wants us to look certain ways. They want us to behave in certain ways. They want us to be like everyone else. And I think that there are good things that come out of that. I think that having connection with other individuals, having ways of, connecting and doing things. So, like, let's say that you really like swimming. Well, there's got to be a group of other people that really like swimming so you can connect with them and have that connection. But there is a toxic side to our society in the perspective that this uniformity, and it can go pretty toxic. Like, it can go, how fair is your skin, or how much weight do you have, or do you have the perfect body figure, or do you speak the right way, or do you have the right degree, or do you have the right upbringing? Who are your parents? Where are you from? There's a lot in our society that I understand. Like, I understand why these pressures are on us. And there's a lot of underlying different causes that bring those pressures on us. But in the end, it's kind of a thing where you can end up in a very, I would almost call it kind of a sick place, where you're really trying to conform to what society does. And it could go to doing extreme plastic surgery that puts your health at risk, or it could go to using chemicals that are dangerous, or it could go to being so unhappy and depressed because you don't fit these conformities or these norms, that you end up just in a sad, sad, sad place. And so I want to talk a bit about that. Like, I want to talk a bit about where these lines are, how we draw them, and really get into self acceptance. And unfortunately, the pressures don't just come from the TV, or they don't just come from the radio, or they don't come from, pop stars or celebrities or influencers. They come from our family members, they come from our spouses, they come from us. We ourselves do this to ourselves. And these conformities, like I said earlier, are good for connection, but they can be very toxic. And that's where you have to really, really sit down, and you have to really think about and delineate, what things do I want to conform to and what things do I not want to conform to. And I think the first thing is having a good understanding of yourself. And sometimes we have to do this reset. Sometimes we have to look in the mirror, look in our thoughts, look at the different ways that we're trying to conform, and just stopping for a moment and just telling yourself, I'm okay with myself. I'm okay where I'm at right this very moment. And the reason you want to do that is you want to do a reset. And I think that part of it is it's healthy. I think that it's really healthy to sit down and do a reset and say, okay, let's take all the attributes of Jeremy. So Jeremy likes clothes and fashion. So Jeremy's going to look a little more fashionable because he likes that. And even at the criticism of others, I'll dress up more. And I actually enjoy it. I enjoy it. Even though I get criticism from others, I enjoy it. What other things that Jeremy's uncomfortable with? Well, Jeremy's really uncomfortable with his teeth. And, there's a gap in my teeth that really drives me nuts. I want to get it fixed. And then I talk to peers and they're like, no, 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 it looks fine. That gives you character. And it's kind of funny because I do want to conform. Like, I want to have like those perfect teeth. But in reality, I don't know if I want to go through the work. And I think that it's good to challenge myself and say, Jeremy, just be okay with what you look like right now. Just, you know, you do you. And I love that statement. Like, I love the statement, you do you. And the reason I love that statement is because it gives you some license to be yourself. And that's something that we need to really appreciate. And so there are going to be things that we as individuals conform to. So there are going to be things that we conform to because we want to conform to them. And that is okay. Like, if you connect with conforming to something, so if you connect with, I gotta have like the perfect outfit and I gotta behave the perfect way when I'm around dinner guests, hap at it. Really, you do you. But I don't have to do that. Like, I want to look great in my outfits and I want to have social encounters with people, but I know kind of my boundaries. I know that with, and it's funny because I do really well when I'm public speaking, and I do really well when I am, interacting with a few people. But if you get me into a large room with a bunch of people and there's no constraints on it and you're just talking to random people, most part I either pull someone aside and we just have a interpersonal conversation, or I just sit and listen to a bunch of people talk. And that's kind of how it functions. And then I get really exhausted after a while and I have to exit. And there was a long time I struggled with that. I really struggled with the part where I thought something was really wrong with me, actually, that I had to leave the room and just take a break from everyone. And I really did think there's something wrong with me because I am surrounded by pretty social people that can go for a very long time. And I'm not like that. And that was a huge awakening for me when I realized that I needed that break and that was who I am. And that may not be something I can fix in the long term. We never know. And that's kind of one of the things that you have to sit and examine. You have to think about, okay, so what are the things that I want to conform to? What things do I enjoy? What things do I struggle with and can't change at the moment? And these things may be mental, they may be physical, they may be emotional, but you never know. At some point in the future, you may be ready to challenge those things. If it's mental, like if it's a mental thing, you may be able to challenge it in the future and overcome and do something or go into a direction that you want to go, but you may not be ready for that right now. And there's many things like that for me where I know this is a characteristic in my personality that I want to change, but I can't do it right now. And I have to accept that and I have to be okay with that and acknowledge that, hey, there may be a point where I am ready to kind of confront this. Self acceptance is tough because you will have peer pressure from your family, from your partners, from your friends. And there will be times when your friends and partner and family may tell you, these are things we struggle with you. And, you know, with feedback, and this is feedback regardless of circumstances, with feedback, take it with a grain of salt. And so what I mean by that is sometimes salt adds flavor to your food. It makes it really, really good. Other times salt is something you don't want on your food. Like dessert, like unless it's like salted caramel ice cream or something like that. And maybe then you do want salt, but take it with a grain of salt. So figure out if this piece of feedback is something that will add more character and is something that you can do, or if it's going to sour the food and not make it tasty. And so, yeah. And so you pick and choose from the things that you're being told. And this is with anyone, like with anyone. This is with your spouse, your parents, your best friend, your neighbors, or whoever in the heck is decided that they're going to give you quote unquote feedback. I, and the thing is there are going to be things that you can work on. So there are going to be pieces of feedback where you're like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for telling me that. That was something I was wondering about, or that's something I wasn't aware of. And then you can work on it. And there's going to be other things where you say, yeah, thank you for your feedback. Unfortunately, this is just kind of who I am. And, this is just how it works. And so hopefully you can accept that. And then if they can't, that's their loss. If they can, then that's great. I think that it's good to be picky about the people that you surround yourself with. And of course, you're not going to be able to choose everyone, like your family and that sort of stuff. But I think it is good to be picky and judicious about the type of people that you surround yourself with that will be open and will give you feedback, but then also will respect boundaries. And of course, you can't force anyone anything. You can't force anyone to change. The only person you can change is yourself if you want to change. And sometimes you can't even force yourself to change. And, you know, self acceptance is that. I think that life is a lifelong journey. I think that if you look back at yourself 10 years ago versus now, what you would see an individual that is really different from who you are today. And those differences come out of experiences. So those differences come out of these small moments of learning that add up over time. They come through experience of living life and how you approach it. And so that's what I would argue with any feedback or any kind of insecurity that you have is over time you're going to be a different person. So as you change and grow and go through this life experience, really, you're going to be a different person. And so is that person going to be able to meet the challenge of what you're choosing to work on, or is that person not going to be ready for it either? It doesn't matter. What matters is that you understand that you are beautiful and unique, and very beautiful and unique regardless of the flaws that you have. And we all have flaws. Every single one of us has flaws. Even the most perfect person in the whole wide world, the most perfect face and most perfect teeth and the most perfect body has issues. And in fact, I often wonder if people that have a lot of imperfections are probably happier because, they just kind of say, this is who I am. They come to that resolution earlier, I think, than people that are constantly trying to keep up and they succeed on a few things. I wonder if they have a harder experience. I don't know. I know that my experiences with it have been mediocre. So basically, my experience with it is I know all my flaws. I know everything I want to improve. I know that I can't improve everything all at once. And I know there's things that I want to improve that I'm just not going to improve. And I'm in acceptance of that. And I really do think that is self acceptance. It's really accepting yourself and then knowing the things you want to improve and working on them slowly over time, and then knowing the things that you just can't improve and being in acceptance of that. And I think that is beautiful. I think that is the human experience. There's no perfection. Although you may see what is quote unquote perfection, it isn't. There's flaws in every single aspect of every single individual and every single thing that happens. There's no perfection. The way that you become better and more perfect is over time with diligence. I think that it's a quote: to master something, you have to spend 10,000 hours on it. And I think that's very true. I think that learning music, playing the guitar or playing the piano, it takes 10,000 hours to become fairly good at it. And like for me, I play the guitar and I play piano, and I'm in I'm in acceptance that it's more of a hobby for me. Like I enjoy playing and I enjoy playing songs and hearing myself and just expressing myself through music, but I'm not expecting perfection and I don't want to get perfect. Like there's some things that I want just as hobbies. So music and photography and different things I want as a hobby. Like even the podcasting, I don't want this as a job. I want this as a hobby. I want to be able to share things and put good things out into the world. And I don't want this to be a job. I'm enjoying it and I'm having fun. And sometimes with work, it becomes tougher. So it's kind of funny how that all works. Like it's funny how the mental perspective works on that. But I think there is a place for work, and I think there's a place for diligence and for, you know, that professional atmosphere and connecting with the thing that you do and that sort of stuff. I think there's a place for that. But I also think there's a place for hobbies, and that's part of self-acceptance too. I think is really kind of examining your life and saying, okay, these are the things I love and accept myself on. These are the things that I struggle with that I can change. These are the things I struggle with that I'm not able to change at the moment. These are the hobbies I love. These are the things I like to do. And just looking at that person and seeing all the character and beauty and all the things that are great about that person and defend that person. So when you're getting feedback, set boundaries on it. So, if they're saying, "Hey, Jeremy, I don't like this aspect of you." Well, thank you for your feedback. It's just who I am. And, that's, I apologize, but that's not going to change. And even if you get pushback, just, I think that you can nicely say no, thank you. But there might be things where you're like, oh yeah, that's a good point. Maybe something I want to work on. Yeah, and unfortunately, actually it isn't unfortunately. Fortunately, there's no right answer. So fortunately, we do get choice and we do get to be judicious and we do get to sit down and say, okay, this is how and where and why and what I'm going to challenge myself on. And this is why I'm going to do this. Know your capabilities when you're going through this and just work to do better, grow with time, and love yourself and all your warts. That's kind of the messaging on self-acceptance. And there may be times where there's a lot of criticism. There may be times where there's a lot of feedback and that sort of stuff. Take it with a grain of salt. Figure out what things you want to improve. Now, one thing I will say with self-acceptance, and this is something I feel fairly strong on, is I do think it's our responsibility as individuals to know that life is a lifelong journey of learning. Life, and I'm going to repeat that. Life is a life is a lifelong experience of learning. And what I mean by that, a lot of life in there. What I mean by that is you're never going to stop learning. And you may in your head think, well, I've learned everything. I know everything. I'm kind of locked into life where I'm at. And I would say, no, you don't. And the way I'll argue this, and for anyone that's under 20, 21, I apologize. But when you're younger, you feel like you got it all figured out. And I know for a fact that as I get older, I realize the less I know. And that's just the way life is if you feel like you have it all figured out, you don't. None of us do. No one has it all figured out. We're all doing the best we can with what we got, and there's beauty and there's a freedom in that we should embrace and enjoy. That there's no perfection. There's only growth, and there's only acceptance that we kind of go into the future with. And, if you're around a bunch of people that criticize you, or if all you hear is criticism, that is something to kind of examine. And don't examine it from a negative perspective, but really sit down and look at it and say, okay, is it me or is it them, or do I need new friends, or do I need to have a different perspective on the world? There was one saying that I love this saying actually, but there's one saying that I kind of take the heart, and I think it's very very true, because sometimes in a self-awareness we aren't aware at all. And there was one day, I remember this specifically, I was going through, and I'd gone through to my little co-op, which I absolutely love, and got my organic food and all that fun stuff. And I was going through the checkout line, and I just had like a very negative interaction with my little cashier. And I was like, they must be having a rough day. And so then I'm like, do my thing, and then I go somewhere else, and I have another negative interaction. And then I'm going along, and then I call my friend, and I have a negative interaction there. And there was this saying that if you are having just a one-off interaction with someone, and it's negative, it's probably them. But if you are having a lot of negative interactions with a lot of people, it might be you. And there may be something going on either in how you're seeing things or in your approach, or something that is giving you consistent interactions. And it may be that you're noticing things that other people don't notice, or whatever it is. And to be honest with you, I don't know if that's like the best way to do things. But I also think that, maybe part of, self-acceptance is going through and saying, you know what, I just have a lot of these interactions and I'm fine with it. You never know. But I think that it would be good to sit down and talk to someone too, and just say, hey, this is kind of my experience in life. Like, I just have a lot of negative interactions, and I see a lot of negative things, and really sit down and, talk to someone about it, and see if there is some underlying history to that, or if that's just who you are, or what have you. There are things, and that's the thing that's it's just life. This is just life. There are parts of your character that is just who you are, and there's part of my character that's just who I am. And I know that's pretty definitive. Like, I'm saying, well, this is who I am and I'm not changing. But there are parts of your characters that this is who you are and you're not changing. And it may be that some point in the future you're ready to change, or you're ready to, go about this. Or you may think, and I do, there's parts of my character where I'm like, no, I'm not going to be necessarily the best person, and I'm okay with not being the best person in these specific circumstances. And I think that's perfectly fine. I think that, part of, we're not all automatons. We're not all perfectly the same. And so that, appreciate like the different parts of your character, and appreciate kind of the strength in your character that you have, where sometimes you won't deal with crap from people. And I think there are points where that's a good characteristic, and I think there's points when it's a bad characteristic. And I also think that there's points where you may not deal with crap from people, and that's just who you are. And sometimes it's not a good thing, sometimes it's a good thing, and sometimes that's just perfectly fine. And yeah, that's it, we're not automatons. We're not exactly the same. None of us are, and that's just life. It's just life. It's just we're not the same. None of us are, and I guess that's what I want to talk about is just self acceptance and understanding the complexity of it, and understanding that there are good things in it, there are negative things in it, and there are things that you just gotta love and care for yourself the way you are. And you know, it's kind of funny. I look at different characters in different movies, and I think of all the different quote unquote characters that I'm surrounded with, and there's a beauty in each of these individuals, and there's some people that aren't like the greatest people to interact with, but even then there's a beauty in these individuals that I absolutely love. And of course there's parts of the character I'm like, no thank you, but there's also parts where I'm like, this is a beautiful thing to kind of see. And you know, one other piece then I want to bring into this is accepting others. And I think self acceptance is something that's so important. Like, it's like one of the basics. But I also think that then it's extending that to accepting others for all their warts. And I think that sometimes it's easy to do that. I think that sometimes it's easier to accept others for their warts and not yourself. At least that's been my experience. But if you struggle with accepting others, what I will say is this is when you are interacting with different people, everyone's going to bring as much different character as you have in into the experience that you're having with them. What I'll say is this is appreciate kind of the negative parts of their character, but really look for the beauty in their character. Look for the things in their character that bring a bit of interesting perspectives, or bring a bit of just humor, if anything. Like, there's one person I can think of that is a pretty tough character. Like, this person you do not want to cross, and they will tell you how it is, as it is, and what's going to happen. And so, really, whenever you approach this person, you have to be very cognizant of how I'm approaching this. You know, I'm just going to get to the facts, and that's it, right? But then, so this is a pretty obstinate character where they're just like, well, it's either yes or no, it's black or white, and there's no gray. And so then that eliminates like everyone's opinions except for 10%, which are on the black or white side. And so then, you know, that type of character can be very alienating. But what I'll say is this same character was the same one I was talking to them, and they're talking about traveling, and they had like the best perspective on traveling. And I was just like, this is phenomenal. This is a phenomenal experience to see this person in a different light of outside of the obstinance. And they're like, yeah, when I go traveling, and especially if I have my family and I have all these things going on, I've set a rule, and as a family, we kind of set a rule of whoever wants to see whatever, the whole family goes and does it. So if someone wants to stop at some store along the way on a trip, everyone gets out and we stop. And so it eliminates like a lot of arguing and a lot of, people feeling like they miss out. And I'm like, God, that is such a beautiful perspective. Like, it's just phenomenal to think that, of that accommodation of, putting that requirement out there that, hey, in this family, whenever we travel, everyone gets to do the thing they want to do. If they want to go to this little store or whatever, then everyone kind of goes with it and there's no hemming or hawing about it. With the knowledge that then you can say, hey, I want to go to this store, and everyone then goes. And I thought there was a beauty in that I'd never really thought about, because I really, in traveling with friends and traveling with spouses and family, there's always been some argument of, I don't want to go to that store, I don't want to go here. And with the kind of the rule of, well, we all kind of have to do it, but everyone gets to do what they want. I really appreciate that. And it was just cool to see that kind of come out of this very obstinate character. And I was kind of like, this is phenomenal. And there's a beauty in that I just appreciated. Is it the right or wrong answer for you and me? Who knows? Like, we're all individuals. Whatever is going to fit our character, our style, and the way we would approach life is going to be completely different. But if you can, especially when dealing with others, if you can look for those pieces of beauty in their character and get over kind of, the different things that you don't like about their character, I think that it actually, can strengthen your character. But I also think that it gives you a way of being open to others that you normally wouldn't be open to. Okay, so that's kind of my feelings on self-acceptance, and I'd be curious to hear your feedback, or if you have a topic you want me to cover, you can contact me at contact@howtoloveliving.com, or you can go to my website, howtoloveliving.com. One book to think about when you're going through this is the book that kind of inspired me to talk about this topic, outside of I was having a lot of personal experiences lately with self-acceptance, is A Guide to the Present Moment by Noah Elkrief. And I'm going to have a link in this show notes. So you should, if you're like an Apple podcast, you should see the show notes in the podcast. So if you go to the show description or whatever, for that, individual podcast episode, I'll reference this book in there. It's, again, I'll repeat it, A Guide to the Present Moment by Noah Elkrief, Elkrief. And basically, what I loved about this book is it just dives right into self-acceptance. Like the first, I think, chapter 2 are just about accepting yourself. And, really the book is about being in the present moment, which a lot of Eckhart Tolle talks about as well. But this one just dives right into self-acceptance, and I was loving it. And I was just like, you know what? It was so empowering just to, hear that there's a way you can accept yourself. And yeah, I definitely recommend it. And definitely reach out if you have any feedback, or you just want to chat, or if you have a show or episode idea, then let me know. Otherwise, I will talk to you next week. Have a great week. Stay safe. Do the things you need to do. Take care of yourself as we're going through the next couple weeks. And I will be here in another week. And I think next week's topic is going to be on, I don't know yet. I got a lot of topic ideas. And that's one thing I love about this podcast, is I have so many topic ideas that I haven't run out yet. So hopefully you'll keep listening, and hopefully you'll get something out of each and every episode. Well, thank you for listening. My name is Jeremy, and I hope you have a great week. Talk to you later. Bye.